Today we're talking about fitness lessons learned from the Over 40s Cricket World Cup, where James has just been. Good experience in many ways. You want to quickly, I know this is a short podcast, but you generally dive straight in, but what is one of the lessons learned that you don't go out, get in a taxi and then run away because you might get chased down the street with a gun or something?
It's one way to start. I wasn't expecting the podcast to start off this way. So, that is one good way. No names mentioned of who the person involved with. But yeah, if you're traveling in certain parts of the world and if unfamiliar with those said places, it's probably a good idea not to go out at 4 a.m. and do silly things like that. I think that's the best way to put it. So that's definitely a lesson learned.
Exactly. There's a lesson learned, not necessarily a fitness lesson, but a life lesson. So let's jump into fitness lessons. So you have just been to the Over 40s Cricket World Cup. Generally, how was the experience, first of all?
Oh, it was amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. It was an experience of a lifetime. I think that's the closest I've ever been to living the life of a professional cricketer. It was incredible, from everything, from being picked up, looked after, at the games themselves, the venues we played at. If people have seen my Instagram page with loads of stories and stuff during that time, there's lots more videos coming out with the vlogs on our YouTube channel to see a bit more behind the scenes. But it was just incredible. What an experience playing against players I used to watch on TV. That was phenomenal. You know, it was even just little things like singing the anthem before each game as well. It was just like huge moments that I want to go and do again. And there's a lot more to come in the next couple of years. So hopefully it's not my first World Cup and it won't be my last. So in terms of the experience, phenomenal. Cape Town, a wonderful city. Dangerous in places if you go to the wrong places at the wrong times of day. However, in terms of experience, fantastic place. Fantastic place. From the scenery to the beaches to the Table Mountain to the cricket venues. What an experience. And it's given me a taste for wanting more, put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, one of the venues overlooking Table Mountain in the background, which was...
They all did. That's the incredible thing. It was all everything was overlooking Table Mountain. So you saw it all, and it's just incredible. And Table Mountain itself was just somewhere where you just couldn't stop looking at it. And you look at it and go, that's amazing. Then you go up the top of it. It looks even more amazing from the top down. So... Yeah, really, really special.
So obviously, in the few months preceding, we've been training you specifically with the World Cup in mind. We've upped your weight loss, fat loss protocol. We've been doing the weight vest protocol with you, which has helped you drop a good few. How many kilos was it ultimately?
5.5.
5.5 kilos. Get down to your fighting, cricketing weight. So what would you say was the biggest lesson then you learned? So
I think in terms of the training itself, everything was going really well up until Christmas. I think that's really important to state that now. I felt good. I felt, honestly, that program with the assault bike, Josh, was amazing. I felt so good in terms of fitness, cardiovascular fitness and everything. I went skiing over Christmas, and that was the best and lightest I've been on the snowboard for many, many years, and it felt phenomenal. However, between New Year and the start of the World Cup, I was sick. There was this horrendous flu bug going around and COVID again around the UK. And I got sick 3 or 4 times in the space of 6-week period. So I actually went out to the World Cup sick. So I wasn't able to train or do anything up until that point properly. It was an absolute nightmare. Plus, there was a couple of trips away I had to go and do with work and various things. But it was the illness that held me back. So feeling training-wise, absolutely amazing up until December. And then, sadly, the last period leading into the World Cup, it wasn't the best prep because of illness. And that's sadly life, isn't it?
Can't be helped, though, could it? That's life. Yeah, that's life.
It is. So in terms of that, I think the fitness lesson I learned going into this was consistency is important. Cardiovascular fitness is really important. And I think I've become an even bigger fan of the assault bike and the protocols we were doing on the assault bike in terms of particularly working with cricketers. And I'd say it's surpassed my love for the rowing, the Concept 2 row, I think, as well, just because of the results I had using the assault bike so often. So both in terms of weight loss, but that was a different protocol altogether, but just the overall fitness and power to weight ratio, absolutely brilliant. Can't say enough good things about that. So
I know you had that, as you say, you had that bad period after Christmas leading up to it, but do you think the training did have some good carryover to it? Did you feel it in the field when you were playing?
Massively, I felt it. I felt it could be even better, I think, and that was only because of the last 6 weeks leading into it. So apart from that, I felt good. I felt light. I felt agile. I felt I was able to move. So that was really good. But like I said, the lesson I had out there was not necessarily what we had working together going into it, but it was lessons learned by other players in the age group category, not just for the Welsh team, but I mean for all the teams in general. So what you saw was, because of the heat, the fitter the player was, the better they carried over to their game. So we saw a number of players score runs and get starts, but then they fatigued very quickly in the heat. They were exhausted, and you could see their level of skill drop completely. So what you had was very highly skilled players on all sorts of teams, but in the heat, there was a dipping point. And there was always that same period within the first hour or two, they get to that stage where it started to drip off. So that, again, it comes down to, if you're playing sports, if you're not fit enough, irrespective of skill level, it's going to impact your decision making and it's going to affect your performance. I think that's the huge takeaway, is that a lot of people weren't cardiovascularly fit enough to maintain their skill set on the field, which was then detrimental both to themselves as players, but also to the team as a whole as well. And that was the consistent theme I saw across it.
Yeah, and you get mentally fatigued as well if you're not as cardiovascularly fit, don't you? So you start making poorer decisions and you get out, etc. So was that something you noticed across quite a lot of teams then, not just Wales?
Massively, yeah, absolutely. Quite a few of the teams, particularly the lower ranking teams. I think that was what we saw across the board. And it ties into cardiovascular fitness, was obviously weight loss. And again, people over 40, it's an amateur, a lot of ex-pros in there, but it's mostly amateur. So what you're seeing is a lot of players carrying a lot of excess weight. So they were the ones that tired quickly as well. So there's a lot of factors going into it. So if you're playing masters sports or any type of thing with masters, I think the biggest thing to set you apart from everybody else is your weight. And I think your level of cardiovascular fitness. I think, particularly on the cricket field, but I think it goes through to most sports as well. So it's for those who can look after themselves the best, will have the longest longevity, can you say, in the game, but also have the biggest carryover to their skill set moving forward, because there's a lot of equally skilled players, but the ones that stood out and made the number one run scorer of the team was super light and super fit. If we're being honest, we saw that. So, having that sort of skill set and think for people to learn this moving forward is that you can't discount fitness the older you get, particularly when it comes to sports. In fact, it's the biggest separating factor, I think.
So will that be your number one tip then? Make sure you are cardiovascularly as fit as you possibly can. And also, did you feel that it was, because obviously cricket, you're running between the wickets, so you did some running as well in your program, but do you feel the assault bike had a really good carryover as well for that?
Yeah, in terms of recovery, absolutely, because we were working on 20-second, 30-second pieces, which had a huge carryover to what we were doing in the field. So it was also a way of sprinting without actually sprinting. And again, the older you get as aging athletes, we've got to be mindful of injuries, risks. We've got to mitigate all these things as best as we possibly can. So it had that carryover effect. So I think combining the both was really useful. I'm trying to think what else was the biggest takeaway in terms of that. But yeah, so the assault bike definitely, I think, should be part of any cricketer's program, hands down, particularly in season potentially, as a way of doing it. But I think what that cardiovascular fitness allowed me to do as well, and also the mobility stuff, and focusing on mobility and stretching before and after. Because one of the things I did every day, religiously, was yoga every day, or some form of mobility every morning, 15, 20 minutes. It allowed me to recover faster. So a lot of people would we play Monday, Tuesday, rest Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, rest Saturday, Monday games. It's quite intense. So what I did was making sure we could recover well. And one thing.
Did you have the other guys in the team doing that as well? Were they doing the mobility stretching?
Some of the boys did, but I tell you what I was really impressed with was a lot of the boys did, I think, cold water therapy. I think that's the best way to put it. Is like the pool in the hotel was freezing cold. So even though no matter how hot it was outside, it was always quite cold. So the boys did religiously. They had a cold bath in the morning in the pool, and then after the game as well, they went into the cold water. So I think that helped a lot of them too in terms of recovery.
Yeah, definitely. It's well known to be good for recovery. It's not a magic pill, but it is good for recovery.
Yeah. So again, I think, just a quick recap on the lessons we've learned is that the older you get, if you're still playing in sports, the fitter you are, the greater the gap between you and the opposing players will be, because you can do any sport. You can do a multitude of things, right? But you can outrun them, outplay them, outlast them. There's a whole lot of things here now if you're equally skilled. So I think that's a key takeaway there. And don't neglect mobility and your weight as well. I think those are the three takeaways from what I've learned from the Cricket World Cup, other than it being an absolutely great, fantastic time, and I want to do it again.
Fantastic. Have you got another competition coming up anytime?
We got the season starting soon. Cricket season starting up. So, and then again, do you know, there's another lesson as well, is no matter, with all good intentions, when you're out in an environment like that. So obviously I went down to 68 kilos. So I ended up putting a kilo and a half on because we were eating so much when we were out there. So even doing sports and competition, which is no fact in season, people put on weight all the time. So I ended up putting a kilo and a half. So I'm in mindset now for the coming season. So I've got a kilo and a half to lose again. So there you go.
Oh, we'll get you there, no problem at all. Thank you for that, James. Much appreciated. That is it for today. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to find out more about our system of training, go to strengthmatters.com/system.